Hey, welcome back, everyone. I want to talk about some interesting stuff happening right now leading up to the 2024 elections, which is that, as we know, that there are many of the laws around elections have been changed, and these often get credited as benefiting Democrats more than they do Republicans. An interesting update has come out that Trump is planning to use all these new election loopholes that have been legalized. And of course, he's being criticized for it because, he used to criticize these things. His stance basically now is that this is the new normal and he's going to embrace it. And so all these different election loopholes, Trump looks like, at least they're saying publicly, he's going to use them. Be going into what these are and how that whole thing works. Also, you might remember back in 2020, Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, formerly Facebook, was donating hundreds of millions of dollars to elections in ways that technically would violate some laws that the IRS normally would prosecute people for. People are wondering why he was not at least investigated, if not charged for that. Well, he's trying to do it again this year, and already some states are refusing to join on with it. And while they're also refusing to join on, Trump is actually calling for him to be charged actually for his actions. We'll see if anything happens with it, but pressure, of course, creates controversy, and controversy tends to make people a little more wary, I think, of doing things that could be illegal. And folks, also the head of the grand jury against Trump has been criticized because of some very bizarre behavior that she had on camera. We talk about these, many other issues, and folks, thank you for being here. Always a pleasure having you all here. Quick reminder, we will jump over to Epic TV after about 25 minutes or so those of you on YouTube and elsewhere, be sure to join us on Epoch TV. It's our uncensored channel. Again, I do an hour and a half show, and so a lot of it's there. The live Q&A is there, and you also help keep this show going because YouTube just plain old, I think, doesn't like me at this point. What are you going to do? That said, folks, jump into the first story. Let me show you this. This is actually Wall Street Journal, and it says, Donald Trump changes tune in mail-in voting and ballot collection. And it says, after years of assailing early voting, remember this was one of the changes they made to election laws with COVID, the pandemic. Because of COVID, Democrats mainly were able to change election laws across many states. And these changes to election laws that made illegal things that used to be illegal are credited as some of the big loopholes that people say very likely led to fraud, or at the very least maybe changed the rules of the game in a way that is not quite fair. Mainly because Democrats do it, Republicans don't. Trump's saying he's done with it, he's going to do it, and so if those loopholes are there, he's going to exploit them. That's what he's saying. It says here, Donald Trump is having a change of heart. And it says the 2024 presidential candidate, this is Wall Street Journal, remains critical of various forms of early voting, advisors say, but his campaign is nonetheless mounting an effort to pursue such votes after Democrats excelled at doing so in recent elections. His team is studying state laws governing absentee and mail-in voting, as well as ballot collection, which people call ballot harvesting, says by critics, in which third parties gather and turn in votes, people familiar with the effort said. So, ballot harvesting, early voting, mail-in ballots, Trump's getting on board with all of it, folks. Further in, it states that Mr. Trump highlighted the move in a fundraising email this week stating, quote, this is Trump saying it, the radical Democrats have used ballot harvesting to cancel your vote and walk away with huge elections that never should have won. They never should have won. But I'm doing something huge to fight back. And Trump states our path forward is to master the Democrats' own game of harvesting ballots in every state we can. But that also means we need to start laying the foundation for victory right now. And in December, Mr. Trump told Breitbart News that the GOP, the Republican Party, has no choice but to, quote, live with the system that stinks, while maintaining, quote, a mail-in ballot will always be corrupt, and that Republicans should seek to change laws. In other words, Trump is not technically changing his position. He still disagrees with these altered laws. He still doesn't agree with them. But he says, you know what? Until we can change them, until we can get rid of them, they're there. They're being exploited. And if we don't exploit them as well, we're going to lose. That's his position. It's a very classic art of war here. This is very classic, I think, Trump style. Trump doesn't. In my opinion, Trump is different from maybe the Republican establishment because he fights dirty. And I know that that's often where people dislike him, including Democrats, ironically, even though he uses a lot of their same tactics. It's typically the left that does, cancel culture, personal attacks, name calling, naming and shaming, attacking people individually. Pretty much the whole system you have for that. Republicans usually don't play that game. They tend to see it as unpresidential. They tend to see it as mean and just not of good character. But Trump does it, and Trump's very aggressive with it. We see also that Trump is not afraid of basically playing their games as well, doing things that Republicans actually do regard as unethical, and that Trump himself has not changed his position on, that he believes it's unethical, although not illegal because the laws have been changed. And he's now planning to use things that are legal, but that even he regards as being unethical in order to try to win the elections because, again, the rules of the game have changed, and he's aware of that. All right, folks, that said, one of the other big things that people called out was the Zuck Bucks, as they called them, the money from Mark Zuckerberg and the organization he created to basically bankroll the election systems. Now, he did this in ways that were we can't call them illegal because, we didn't actually look into it. It hasn't been prosecuted. But under any normal circumstance, the IRS would investigate, given the fact that there was basically politically biased campaign donations donations to elections being done in ways that would swing things in favor of one party over another based on where he's given the money to. In other words, he found kind of a loophole within the election system in terms of campaign financing, it looks like. One that is possibly illegal, but we'll have to see if it ever gets prosecuted. It's running into controversy this year. In 2020, this was one of the main things cited, although there were many, that actually helped kind of swing the elections in favor of the Democrats. But it's running into controversy. Let me show you this. The Federalist has a story. Zuck Bucks 2.0 recipients turn down money after leftist nonprofit fails the transparency test. And it says 3 of the 10 counties chosen as beneficiaries of a program from the nonprofit that helped fund the private takeover of government election offices in 2020 are refusing to accept those dollars leading up to the 2024 cycle. Keep in mind, folks, 3 of 10, that means that there were still, the majority of them are still taking the Zuckerberg cash. But it says election officials from Brunswick and Forsyth counties in North Carolina and Ottawa County in Michigan have chosen not to accept funds from the U.S. Alliance for Election Excellence. That's the name of the organization. It's a program that plans to funnel $80 million in election grants to jurisdictions across the country over the next 5 years. The Alliance is a project of the Center for Tech and Civic Life. That's the main one under Zuckerberg. It says one of 2 groups that funneled over $328 million of private money from Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, known as Zuckbucks, to government election offices, mostly in blue counties of swing states, mobilizing Democrat get-out-the-vote efforts and swinging the race in Joe Biden's victory. Now, remember, normally there are campaign finance laws. If you donate directly to a candidate, if you donate directly to a candidate, technically you can only give so much money to that candidate. Because if you exceed a certain amount of money, it might be $1,000 in some areas, or it changes state by state and election by election. But if you exceed that amount, well, you've committed a crime and you'll go to prison for it. Remember that that was why under the Obama administration, his administration had Dinesh D'Souza thrown in prison. You might remember. Because Dinesh violated campaign finance laws, not in a major way. I think it was like a couple $1,000s. But he went to prison for it. Dinesh D'Souza went to jail for this.